Welcome back to episode 28 of the Precious Metal Gens podcast. I'm Zan here with Brian. Today we're going to be having a collector conversation later on with Brian, King's Collection 615, who's going to be joining us to talk about his love of collecting Eddie George cards and his recent foray into collecting 90s baseball. So stay tuned for that later in the program. First, we're going to do sort of a menagerie of things, not really the recurring segment so much. We'll touch on a card of the week, but I have no mail day. I'm still selling. Fortunately, I've tracked today. I'm about 75% of the way towards funding my Grail card, hoping to be closer to 85% by the end of the year, and then 100% by the end of January. So that's really I'm in selling mode. I did say accidentally win a card last night. I put a high bid on a card that I forgot about and woke up to an invoice. So yeah, I guess that's the only buying activity I've had lately. Did you pick up anything this week?
I have not. No, I'm kind of in a holding pattern to trying to pay off a few cards um, by the end of this year that I've funded, and then really just kind of waiting and seeing what pops up on some of the PC fronts that I have, the different players, and just really just watching right now for cards that I don't you don't really see every day. Usually like the 101s for some of my stuff, like Clay Matthews stuff, or if some of the golds at the right price for like Rogers pop up. I think to start the year, I'll probably start looking for more of those golds for Rogers because I think they'll probably be a pretty decent price considering his season. Some people might have bought into some of his gold prism stuff and then now are trying to sell it because they're not happy with the way that the year turned out, something like that. So
It's a good time to buy his cards for sure if you're a Rogers collector. Yeah, speaking of, since you've picked up a lot of stuff this year, and I did too, we need to make sure we do a sort of a top 10. Everybody does their Christmas tree of top cards. And since this is not technically a visual show, we'll have to do it by spoken word only. So maybe we could do that in a couple of weeks. I want to focus on the card of the week here, which is a Paul Molitor card, which you probably didn't expect, but his 1999 Gem Masters just sold a few nights ago. It was Com C, but the auction was through eBay, so you could bid on it if you were on eBay. It was a CGC9, so a little bit of an oddity in terms of grading company that was chosen, but obviously in good condition. And looking at the card kind of confirms that it is in good condition. It ended at a final price of $10,988. So pretty big sale there. Big sale there, especially for Molitor in his later years. What did you make of that sale, Brian?
yeah, I thought the price. I mean, it's a high price, obviously for any card, but I think if you look at in like comparison to some other bigger players right around his caliber, I think the price was, you know, kind of on the value side. I mean, I guess if I didn't have so many like collections, I think I talked to you about this, like always wanting to kind of like explore Molitor cards. It just sucks that he doesn't have like really any major Brewers cards. A lot of his Brewer stuff is, kind of like the base top stuff from the 80s and early 90s. And then, he leaves and he goes to Toronto, which was really painful for me. I remember as a kid. And then he starts getting some, better cards. And then especially in the Twins, all of his really, really good sets from the later 90s are in Twins gear. And I would bounce around the idea of like picking up a few cards here and there of him. But then I would go back and be like, well, I don't know if I really want Twins cards. So it's just kind of bittersweet for me. I think as far as like the quality of card, I would say that that's probably like, if you look at the sets, that's probably his best card. I mean, that 99 Gem Masters in baseball is probably like collectively the top card of a player that played during that era. I know some people would argue if they don't like, they don't value the 99 PMGs. They say maybe, they like different cards of that player better. I don't know. So I guess where I'm at with it, I think it's a strong sale for him, but I think you could also make the case that it's value price based on like where some other 101s or gem masters have fallen, for a player of his caliber. So, but it was a healthy sale. It's pretty high overall.
Yeah, and as far as Brewers cards go, I mean, his rookie, I think is 78 tops. He's not even on it by himself. I think it's like a quartet of shortstops. So this is his highest selling card with just Paul Molitor on it. Um,
It's a
I looked at
Trammell
some
rookie
other,
too, so he's
yeah,
sharing
Trammell
his.
rookie.
He's got two Hall of Famers on that card, and it's a pretty ugly card. I have a
Yeah.
copy that's actually pretty clean. That there's like a print defect on the bottom of those cards on a lot of them. It's like a almost like a looks like a paint smear or something, or like an ink
Mm.
smear on the bottom. And if you can find ones, no matter what the grade is, that don't have that, that's generally what people like. I have one that's pretty clean that doesn't really have that mark, but I think his 79 is a better looking card. Some of his even like early 80s cards are better looking than that card. So yeah, it's not the prettiest thing.
I looked at some other Gym Masters sales. The highest public sale, what's actually a private sale, but it's been made public. The Barry Bonds MLPD 99 Gym Masters. Andy got that one 60,000 earlier this year in January. Derek Jeter on the fly back in April 2021, auctioned through Golden, finished at 43,000. And then actually, I think the Molitor was third. Then you jump down, Kerry Wood, base 99, PM Gym Masters, 6,300 in April of 2023. This one I sent to you and just realized it. Someone made a good point that it ended at like 5:52 p.m. on Thanksgiving. Although it wasn't an auction, I think that's when it was posted. Frank Thomas, MLPD 99 GM, just sold raw 5K on November 28th, 2024. So the bin got hit on that, I would imagine, pretty immediately. Pretty shocking sale there. Half the price of the Molitor. And then I just put this on Juan Guzman, $2,760 back in July 2024. I see these Commons players in the $2,000 to $3,000 range, which kind of sets your floor for some of these 99 Gem Masters. I liked that the Molitor auctioned off. It kind of gave me a guide of where players should be. I paid kind of blindly for my Bagwell. I think I got a good deal on it. I know Scotty B cards. He has the Larry Walker. He didn't have too much of a a reference base, I guess, for what it should be worth or what that card should be worth. Um, so a lot of only a few GM sales, especially on the base cards throughout the past few years. But it sort of gives us a guide to where some of these stars, I guess, should be.
Yeah, if you look at that Kerry Wood base sale of 6,300, and then you have the Molitor at like 11,000. I think that's pretty that's a pretty fair price for the Molitor, in my opinion. I think Molitor, Kerry Wood obviously had his moments, and he's a significant player. If you're just looking at player for player, right, and like what the player meant for teams, I think people need to understand that Molitor was a significant player on multiple World Series teams. A lot of people still to this day in the Milwaukee area will argue that Paul Molitor was the best Brewer, even over Robin Yount. I think that that's kind of crazy. I definitely would not say that, but there are a lot of people they have points and they can make arguments of that. He was obviously very significant for the Blue Jays, so he's got that fan base too. He's beloved there. He's beloved in Minnesota with that team as well. So it's like he had a pretty strong legacy, and to really be, I don't want to say only, but I would just think that it would be, he'd be significantly more than Kerry Wood. I mean, he's more, but it's double, but I'm talking like maybe 3 to 4x type more. He's nowhere near obviously Barry Bonds, but like you look at a Barry Bonds MLPD for $60,000, right? I'm not saying he should be anywhere near that, but like being the player's best card, multiple fan bases, I don't know. I just would have expected actually higher, really.
Here's the one thing I would say, and I didn't realize this. I mean, I didn't follow Molitor's later years that closely, but he retired after 98. And so I wonder if that's potentially why this sale wasn't as high as maybe it would have been had he been active in 99 or playing in 99. Um, Again, some people, and me included, really like post playing days. I mean, I wouldn't get that nitpicky with it. Like I was joking with Andy about the Barry Sanders 99 PMG being post playing days, but really it's I say within a year or two after retirement, especially if that set's already in production, which Metal probably was at the time. Um, I don't have a big deal with it, but maybe somebody says, "Well, that's not technically a playing years card, so I'm not going to go after it." That's only one of the things I could think of for why it ended up at where it did.
Yeah, I can see that. Um, I guess that's a good point. I didn't even really think about that, but I actually thought he stopped in '99. I thought that was his last year, but I just looked it up. It was '98. But either way, I mean, it's pretty darn close. Um, was there a sale? Do you have one in mind? A sale from the '98 PMG set, like what that actually goes for? Just the regular '98 PMG. Is there any
Are you
quotes
saying of
of
Molitor?
Molitor? Yeah, he's running down from like a train or something. It kind of looks like the Burnett's I have.
I don't think there's a last public sale was February of 2023. Best offer 3,500 on a raw copy.
For that
Before
card.
that, on a 98 PMG. Yeah. Prior to that, April 2015 for $52. Same copy that sold in 2023. Actually went for more back in '06 for $22.50.
My God.
I mean less. Yeah, $22.50 back in '06. So if you got in then, you really did well. Um, okay, well, Molitor kind of fits into the discussion we want to just briefly have prior to bringing Brian on. And that is sort of this idea, like we focus a lot on late 90s and early 2000s and onward, really, just because that's when serialized cards came to popularity. Or, well, they were already getting popular, but they came to hit their height of popularity in the late 90s with these cards that were numbered out of 50 and 25 and 24, 20, and then a bunch of 101s, obviously. But there were some great players who just missed that era. And so, you know, you thought of Robin Yount, I thought of Joe Montana. And we want to kind of talk about if you were to collect those players, how would you go about it? So, like, just put yourself in a Joe Montana collector's shoes. How do you approach collecting Montana knowing that 1994 was his last year, like literally right before these big sets hit?
Um, well, I guess it's it would be kind of unfortunate. I try to think of like I brought up Yount, but I think Montana has probably the best kind of connection because Yount was obviously Montana was obviously a more significant player to his sport than Yount, and we get questions. I remember a couple questions coming up about like how do you collect players like this, and there's a lot of Niners fans that want to jump into Montana collections, and they don't really know like where to start. Do you go for post playing years or do you stay with the early stuff, or do you a mix of both? I guess for me, like if I'm going to start collecting Montana, I've tried to do this a little bit with Robin Yount, so I'll try to draw the parallel. I want to get all of his tops stuff, his main tops cards in. I don't really go for the grade, but if I'm trying to put together, like I go more for eye appeal on those. But if I'm going for like scarcity and rarity and like significance, I would probably want like a 81 tops Montana in like a BGS 9.5 or at least a PSA 9, PSA 10, obviously preferably, but something significant like that. If I'm really going to super collect Montana, I really want like the big portion of my collection to be Montana, then I would fork over the cash to get something like that, his rookie. It's unlicensed. It's an iconic card. I've had a number of copies of it as a kid and now in like binders and stuff where I would buy a copy, then I try to upgrade to a nicer copy, then a nicer copy. I think I got to like a 7 or 7.5, and it was decently centered because that card's notoriously off centered. And then I eventually sold it for other stuff. But mainly I'd look at like his tops run and try to get really nice copies of that. And then his 94, his 91 Upper Deck Heroes auto out of 2,500 is a significant card for him. It's one of the earliest autos that were inserted in packs. So looking at that card, you'd want something like that. And then a 94 Finest, of course. The PSA 10, I think, sold last year for, I think it was like 1,800 or something like that. So a really clean copy with no greening. So that was like his last playing years major card. I guess you look at like his biggest cards for playing years would be like the 81, the rookie card, get a clean copy of that. Then you got all the years in between of like the top base cards that are cool together. And then the next biggest card would probably be like his Upper Deck Heroes, the auto, the 91 auto. It's like an art card signed 25 out of 2,500. And then like his 94 Finest. Like with Robin Yell, it's the same thing. You got 75 tops. His rookie card, you want a clean copy of that. And then his next best card is the 93 Finest, the finest 93 Finest Refractor. If you can find a semi-clean copy of that with not very little greening. So I'd start there with those.
Yeah, I think if you're doing playing days, you're somewhat limited to uh, base cards, pretty much. I mean, obviously, you mentioned the UD Heroes auto, and then he autographed some cards in the even into like 96 SPX Tribute. Their autos as time proceeds. He signed more and more. So you could look at it if you're just going playing days. But then, if you're a 90s collector, you're looking at the playing days and saying, well, it's kind of like collecting vintage. I'm just going for high grade base for the most part. 94 Finest Refractor. But again, he's in Chiefs gear. So how desirable is that? Probably not if you're a big Niners fan or a big Montana collector. And maybe if you're a Montana collector and not a Niners fan for some reason, maybe you don't care. But then as time moves on, you could branch out into other areas. Like if you wanted to focus on sort of like this cluster of like '04 to '06, with UD Exquisite, Jersey Autos, uh, '05 Ultimate. He had a game jersey logo auto shield, which I think you've
I'm
got
gonna
a
share the
picture
screen, man.
of.
So if you're listening, if you go to YouTube and take a look at this, I'll just share my screen. It's on Trading Card Database would be the best place to find all these. Just start filtering through the different sets and the different types of cards, the brands. But I think this is just an awesome card. I'd really want this if I were a Montana collector. It's a 101, so I mean, good luck finding
Right.
it. But that
Yeah.
shield's cool on card, great brand.
And again, like there's non one of ones in those years that you could pursue that are relics or they're patches. Um, uh, in To be clear, we're also trying to, number one, this is not intended to be exhaustive by any means. I know there was a comment on the last episode about not mentioning UD Heroes autographs in that set, and certainly was an oversight. But again, we just don't have time to mention every single card. So part of this is doing your own research. And then the second thing is we did kind of confine this to cards where the player is appearing alone for the most part. Montana has autos with Marino, and then a lot of his highest sellers are cards with Brady. So like you've got an '04 Skybox Legends of the Draft dual shield with Brady that sold for 68,000. But that 04, 05, 06, 07 era, you have a sort of a sampling of stuff. If you like that UD exquisite or ultimate collection aesthetic, that's a good place to concentrate your efforts. Then as you move along, Montana starting I think fall 2014 onward,
Yeah,
maybe
he's in a little bit of
20
2014.
yeah 2014 onward, flawless. He signs a lot, so you can find a lot of dual patch cards, autos. They Flawless has like the ruby and sapphire type of autos, so they're really clean. I've always appreciated the design of Flawless. There's that, and then honestly, like we poo poo it, but if you're a ultra modern collector and you just love that stuff, Montana's in the Prism sets. I think there's a black prism, a black finite prism that was up for like some absurd amount. Um, his second highest sale ever is a green kaboom, and his third highest sale ever is a gold kaboom, at least via card ladder. So people obviously care about those cards. I don't think there's a ton of people flipping modern Montana. I could be wrong about that, but clearly that has a market. So he's just sort of a weird player that, if he was playing during the early 2000s or the 2010s, you would have these incredible cards of his that would be playing days cards. But as it stands, with concluding his career in 1994, you just don't have a huge sampling of cards to choose from.
Yeah, I think if there's ever been a time to make a list, like a spreadsheet of specific cards to target, it would be if you're trying to collect Joe Montana, and that was going to be like your primary collection. You're trying to build a list on what to go after because, with a lot of players, there's obviously it's important to make a list, and I just started doing that probably, specifically this year with my players, and it's really helped me narrow down my collection where I'd buy stuff and then I'd kind of look and be like, well, I could probably cut this list down to be less. Do I really need this card because I want to focus on this? And it really helped me keep focus with a player like Montana, where you'd be buying a mix of, the early stuff is easier to get. Like you pretty much know what you're going to go after. His base top stuff and decent grade, have a really nice collection of that. But it's when you get to like the post playing years, you could get wild because they're still making Joe Montana cards. And it's like, where do you stop? Do you just continue to buy all the way through like, the Fanatics era and buy their stuff? Because there's going to be a ton of it because he's signed with Fanatics. So he's going to be signing a ton of stuff. He's going to have probably a bunch of memorabilia cards and all sorts of crazy stuff. So it's like, where do you draw the line? You could easily, I feel like a person doing this would be like a Montana super collector. You'd see that more doing this type of collection where it bridges multiple eras and years, like until even ultra modern, as opposed to like somebody. I think we were talking with Andy semi recently in our chat where he collects obviously San Francisco 49ers, and he's talked about like, I want to pick up like some Steve Young cards. I just don't know like what to get. So like somebody like that, if you're just trying to pick up like a handful of them, if you could find like a really nice, game use patch card, or even like get lucky enough to find like a shield or something with like a really nice chunky patch where you get the white and the red on there, and maybe like you get the mesh part of the jersey with the holes and some of the nylon top part, shoulder part. That'd be kind of cool. But Flawless does have that cool design. I think you start when you look into those early 2000s and even into the modern stuff, you're really looking more to like the brands as opposed to like just like what the like really the car like for the player, because you're looking at the brands. Like, I want to get specifically exquisite, I'm gonna stick to exquisite, ultimate collection, and like flawless, and just explore those sets. You start getting like all these other brands because the early 2000s, like Don Russ has some cool sets too, like the fabric of the game. You start getting into that, buying those, you could get crazy because there's all sorts of different patch cards of him, some with like napkin patches where there's no white and red it's really just either red or white and that's kind of boring? Or do you want to just like focus on card autos, because he's got a ton of sticker autos too in the early 2000s. So you really need to make that focus list and use something like trading card database to kind of filter out those cards, because it gets really tricky when you get in the early 2000s. I think what would be cool is 2015 has a nice Montana in Prism. So if you want to represent him in Prism, 2015 was the first year of the gold vinyl parallel. I think that would be kind of a cool card to have. The 2015 has a nice shot, great photography in that year, and then of like gold vinyl. So like maybe someone wants to represent him in like some major sets, like modern sets or post playing year sets, and you maybe get like focus on that as like your prism card, and then look for like a really nice, I don't know if you're into Kaboom, like a gold or something like that, or like, if there's a really nice flawless card that you like, get one of those and just maybe get one card of each set. These are just random ideas that are coming in my head. If I were to collect him, I maybe would do something along those lines.
Yeah, certainly no right or wrong approach to collecting Montana. If you do collect Montana, it'd be interesting. There's a lot of great um, Montana collectors on Instagram. Check out Joe Montana Collector. I know there's a lot of other ones who have posted some fantastic cards, and there's inspiration there. And maybe you just find some new sets that you like. Before we cut to um, the main conversation with Brian, this kind of dovetails with that, which is like guys whose later years are in the big sets. Molitor, it's basically end of his career, but I always am interested when I think about a guy like Wade Boggs, who played from 83 was his rookie year, I think, or yeah, it was 83, I believe, to 99. And, 99, he's got a Gem Masters. Like there's a Devil Rays Gem Masters of Wade Boggs,
That's a cool
not an
card.
action shot. So, yeah, he's just like signing an autograph, I believe. Um, but it's kind of like, what's the best card for a guy like that? I mean, it's his Red Sox rookie in 83, his Topps rookie in 83. Then you've got like his Yankees years where his best card's probably the 96 Mirror Gold. And then you've got like the 99 stuff where I guess maybe the 97 Flair Showcase Legacy Row Zero Masterpiece would be up there. But, I'm just thinking about these later years of a guy's career where they're in these late 90 sets. Kirby Puckett had a 96 Mirror Gold, so did Ozzie Smith. But, like, do you take the position that even in the later years, that sort of the card and the rarity of the card trumps whatever prior year cards that the guy has, mainly because of the exclusivity of it? Or do you think that like a high grade card of the player in their prime would be more valuable or more collectible? I don't know.
God, it's such a tough question. I There's vintage collectors primarily, or like Hall of Fame baseball collectors, that would crucify me if I were to say that like his 99 Wade Boggs was better than his rookie card in like a PSA 10 or something. I mean, they would just think I was nuts. It's the same thing where if I say, well, like with Molitor, like a PSA 10 of his rookie with Trammell in it, where there's two Hall of Famers on that card, being iconic card, isn't as good as his Gem Masters or something like that. I mean, there's people that would think I was nuts, but I guess for me, I would say the later stuff is better, because it's not like just because you say it's better, you can't own, like everybody can own the 83 tops or whatever it is, the rookie Boggs. Like every person can own it, any grade you want. You could put together the PSA 1 through PSA 10 of that card and hang it on your wall if you wanted to. Like anybody could do it. So I just think like that's a whole other discussion. I know we talked about like Grail, the difference between Grail cards and their best cards, and like it's subjective, and what we say being someone's best card, someone else might say it's not, and like what defines best card. I guess for me personally, what defines best card is like their rarest slash like a level of iconic card. Now Wade Boggs in a Rays uniform, I don't know, maybe it's not as iconic, but I think the set kind of like supersedes and the parallel supersedes what jersey he's in that card personally. If it's me, like for him to span from like the 80s all the way to that card, that's pretty special, I think. And it kind of like caps off his career. And there's actually a lot of vintage collectors that like players in like obscure uniforms too. Like they'll purposely go out and collect like Hall of Fame players in their retirement jersey, right? Like their last team, their last stop. So to some that would be kind of cool, I think.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Like a guy like Boggs bridges sort of this gap between vintage collectors and more '90s collectors, really, because they give different weights to different attributes of the card. Whereas maybe we value rarity, they're typically looking at condition or grade to sort of substantiate um, the value or the uh, you know how coveted the card is. Now, it'd be interesting, like taking Montana. Let's say Montana had hung around for like 2 more years, right? But let's say like in '96 he was a backup for the Bengals, but for whatever reason he had a premium stock mirror red card. That would be an interesting thing to examine, which is like it's technically a playing years card. It's definitely his rarest, but he's in a Bengals uniform and he was just the backup. Situations like that, and I'm sure there's probably situations that we could think of that are similar. Um, but it does kind of create um, a divide among collectors because, like you said, the set and the parallel, the Gem Masters, the PMG, they kind of carry it and they lift it up above maybe just a base tops card.
So
Um,
I have an idea for this. So this is I just thought this is you're talking. So like with Favre, the way I looked at it is like I don't buy any Jets. You could throw like a Jets, the Bowman Chrome. I think he's got a Bowman Chrome Superfractor Jets card. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want it in my collection. You give it to me for a super cheap price. I couldn't buy it. Definitely not a Minnesota Topps Chrome Superfractor, a big card of his. I would not take a Vikings card of him. So I only want Packers for him. Same thing with Rodgers, only Packers. But but that's because they're like they fall in the Packers collection, but they're PC lanes for me, like player PCs within the player collection or the team collection. But then a guy like Richie Sexton, he's iconic to me because he played for the Brewers, but I would buy other team stuff of him, like I want the type of card that he's in the Indians uniform. So like the PMG and the 24 karat, he's in the Indians uniform, but it was before he came to the Brewers, so it's kind of like to me it's like rookie ish type stuff. So I still like it, but it's only because he falls in the team collection, not the PC player lane. But then you could look at it as like, why do I like Amon Green Seattle cards? It's kind of again like that rookie mindset. He wasn't really significant for Seattle, so I don't really have an issue buying him. It's more of like I'm buying like rookie cards of him, and then he has better years as Packers. It's really weird, but I guess that's my thought process to it. And I guess if you're a Montana collector, which would be kind of cool, is you probably have an allegiance to some of the vintage stuff. So you're kind of like a semi-vintage collector and you appreciate those cards, so you could get the best of both worlds. If you wanted to get like the vintage high grade stuff, you could still build a semi like vintage collection if you consider 80s vintage. And then you could also dabble into like the other eras of cards, like some of his 90s post playing year stuff, some of his early 2000s. You could get into ultra modern, so you could use his Joe Montana as being like a bridge through all these different eras of cards, which I think would be kind of cool if you're doing something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let us know on Instagram if you guys, if you collect a player like that, would you rather have the high grade rookie or, card of the guy in his prime in a high grade, or maybe a later years odd jersey, maybe he was a bench player, role player, but the cards, numbered to 50 or 25. I'd be interested to know. All right, now we're going to have Brian, King's Collection 615, on the show to talk about his Eddie George collection and his foray into 90s baseball. So, hope you enjoy. All right, we are here with my friend Brian at Kings underscore collection underscore 615. Brian, I've been trying to get you on the pod for a while. You're an elusive man, but you showed some commitment tonight and drove to your office to record this. So thank you for joining us.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
Okay, so I wanted to have you on. We focused some guests in the last few weeks on the kind of bridge gaps of eras, but you have, like me, are kind of a 90s exclusive guy. So tell me about like when you first started collecting as a kid and then how that journey went over the years and took you to like when you got back into the hobby.
So I'm older than most of the people that I'm buddies with on Instagram that are in the '90s collecting world, and so like I started collecting baseball cards. Dale Murphy, that was my guy. Um, and I think I got my first Dale Murphy card was 1983 All Star Tops Dale Murphy. I still got it. It looks like I played basketball with it at some point. It might be a PSA 1 if I got it graded, um, but that I kind of started there around '83, and so I opened because I grew up in a small town in West Tennessee. Um, that was long before eBay and all that fun stuff. And so the only way to get cards was to buy packs, right? Like that, there was no card shop. There was none of that. So you just went to the grocery store and got uh, a pack or two of cards on your way out with your mom or dad or whatever. And so I opened a bunch of packs from probably 83 to 86, 87. Um, and then that's what got me into it. It was all baseball. That's how I got started. And then in high school, a card shop opened up in the small town, and so I went. I stopped in one day, and I mean, it was a rough one, like like it was rough. But I stopped in, and it was I think 95 or 94, maybe 93, 94, somewhere in there. Um, and I bought a few packs and then got hooked on it on the uh, Topps Finest refractor, trying to get a refractor. Didn't even know what one looked like, right? They were so hard to tell back then. And so trying to get those. And then I did that I collected pretty hard from 93 or so until probably 2000. Um, and then I was in my 20s, and, you know, I had other things that I was focused on for a long time. And then uh, COVID hit, right? And then the card world kind of blew up, and one of my buddies showed me a Derrick Henry that he got or something online, and I was like, man, that's pretty sweet. So I kind of got back into it, and I figured, well, Derrick Henry, like that's my favorite player for the Titans, right? Like I'll collect him, um, and that's kind of how I got back into it. And then I never could get over or get the same feeling collecting Henry that I got collecting Eddie back in the '90s. So then I just got rid of Henry and went back and started getting back into '90s. So it's kind of how I got here.
So I look at some of the older posts you have. You mentioned the Derrick Henry. I'm seeing a 2020 stained glass. That's really cool. Some of the on card autos of him. Some nice like chunky patches. There's a gold. I love the optic rookie card.
Mm-hmm.
Either the auto or the base version. You have both of them on here, all with the same pose. I just love that year. But those are really cool Henrys. And then I see you said you shifted over to Eddie George. Was there always a thing for collecting running backs Tennessee obviously has had a history with running backs between Eddie George and Henry, but have you always stuck with the running backs, or have you dabbled in other areas?
No, it's pretty much running backs for football because this sounds funny probably, but so I played high school football, right, and had a lot of offers to go play college football. I was really good, and I'm not just saying that because
Sure you were.
yeah, exactly. But even though I'm a really big man, I am not near big enough to play because I wanted to go be in the SEC, and I couldn't. Like those guys are 6'5", and I'm
Hmm.
6 feet barely. Um, and so in high school, I played against Al Wilson,
Oh
um,
yeah.
um, and and some other obviously good players, but Al Wilson, starting middle linebacker for the Denver Broncos, like really good. He trying to tackle him, I gained so much respect for running backs, and I never had respect for a quarterback because I could just they were easy to tackle. Right, if you ever got there, they were easy to get out. But um, but Al Wilson, there was a couple other guys. He's the only one anybody would know. Um, and then if you look at the running backs that I collected, like Henry and Eddie, they're both like freight train running backs, right? They're giant human beings. They're like linebackers playing running back, and so which was what Al Wilson was in high school. Like that dude was a monster, and he was running back. So I guess that's kind of how it all. That's how I got into the running back world, and I fell in love with Eddie, collecting Eddie because I was in that old grungy card shop, and some dude opened a box of uh, scoreboard in there, and he pulled. I forgot what it is, but it's a scoreboard auto of Eddie in the Oilers uniform, and I was like, I was blown away. Like you got an autograph out of a pack, like that was just, and I had to have it, right? Like so, I think I gave him like $100 for it. It sells today for like 20, but anyway, but that got me into Eddie, and that's how I ended
And
up where I'm at.
and then once I do want to get to like the big Eddie in a second, but
Yeah,
so when you got into Eddie, um, and started learning about like his cards, like so Henry is
yeah,
obviously a modern player, started in 2016, so he's Panini era, and he's got tons of parallels, tons of cards. When you started getting into Eddie, I assume you were pretty amazed at how he had fewer cards
a
than
lot
Derrick
fewer.
Henry,
Yeah,
and fewer exclusive cards in particular. So, like, how was that change for you? And were you hooked by 90s like as soon as you got into it?
yeah, because some we adopted our daughter 8 years ago. She was a week old or so, and excuse me, I sold almost my whole collection back then, just for extra money, right? Because we had a ton that we'd saved, but it didn't matter. It was so expensive to go through that process. And so I sold most everything I had back then. Well, um, that probably would have been 10 years ago because we started, it took a couple of years to get it all done. But so I sold it probably 2013, 14, somewhere in there. Um, and I had an amazing Eddie collection back then, right? Not near as good as it is today, but I had two greens, all kinds of stuff. Um, so then fast forward to Henry. I loved collecting Henry, but you're talking about all the parallels and all the stuff. Like it got to where, yeah, there's a ton of them, but they're the same every year. You know what I mean? Like you have a gold prism in 2017, and then you have a gold prism in 2018 and a gold prism, and it's a different pose and it's a slightly different border, but it's pretty much the same card. And then there's all the variations, but they're all kind of the same. Um, and I missed the 90s where like every year it was completely different. Like whatever card if it's essential credentials in 97 looks completely different from 98, which then looks completely different from 99. Same with PMGs and all. You know what I mean? Like it's like a completely different card. Um, and I like the uniqueness a lot more of the 90s, if that makes sense. So
Oh, absolutely. And so you had once upon a time you had two greens. I know earlier this year you got one back.
I
I
did.
believe it's a PSA graded copy. There it is, and we're gonna do your top five
I know,
cards, and
but
I knew that one was gonna be in there. I mean,
yeah,
so no spoiler alert there.
that's number two.
How did you come about acquiring that card? Because at the time you got it earlier this year, greens were not cheap. I mean, they're not now, and they weren't then. Um, was it a trade, or did you have to sell? Did you buy it? Have to sell stuff? How did you get that card?
So our friend Smitty, what is he
740
740
Smith
Yeah,
cards. Yeah.
yeah. So he bought one, and then the same person was selling like two or maybe sold like three or four of them, right? That he had acquired. And so at the time when the next one came up, I didn't have the money. Nobody really did. I think I just bought something. I don't remember what, but, and so, so Smitty said he couldn't let them get out on the market and be flipped, right? So he was bound and determined to buy them, and so he bought.
Were those all raw copies, or were some graded?
I think one or two of them were graded by BGS, and one or two were raw. I can't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the one that Smitty kept was PSA. I think it was PSA the whole time.
Okay.
Yeah.
But I think he's got the highest graded copy, or there might be two of them, but I think he's got an 8. Um, but but he bought it, and then so I think I traded him one card and then paid the rest in cash, if I remember, or maybe something along that line. I can't remember exactly, but yeah, it was crazy. I was hustling, trying to sell cards and trying to come up with cash quickly. So,
what types of Eddie George cards do you prefer, like from the 90s? You're talking about like the different designs. I mean, again, without getting into like details about your top 5, like your favorites, but like what are you looking for? Is it like some people like the inserts, the numbered insets, some are the parallels, some have like a thing for like the chrome, some have for the PMGs, the essential credentials, the rubies. Where are you at?
So I guess most of the ones that I have are parallels, or that I enjoy, I guess. But I'm good with whatever, as long as I like it, if that makes sense. I don't. I'm not a big fan. I've got a couple of autos and stuff, but I'm not a huge fan of patches or autos or stuff like that. Like, they're fun to look at for a minute, and then I'm kind of over it. I would rather have the shiny, like, yeah,
pretty standard, like everybody, like every one of us.
Yeah,
90s,
like
right?
we all love. Yeah.
exactly. I'm a big fan of gold, even though my top 5 doesn't really have a lot of gold in it. If I'm after a card, like if I'm looking at Eddie's or whatever, if I see one that's gold, that usually catches my attention, and that's one I'm end up
I just asked that because there's usually, like, with everybody who collects in the 90s, there's like, we all kind of like the same type of stuff. I don't think it's not very different, but like if I were to ask somebody, is it like essential credentials, rubies, or PMGs? A lot of us lean like a certain way. For me, it's like the PMGs, or where do you lean in that area? Like if you had to pick one of those.
So definitely, definitely the PMGs. But I like the ones that I had when I was in high school,
Mm-hmm.
right, or college or whatever. And I love the 98 and I love the 99, but I didn't have those. And nobody, I mean, not because they were, but they were just, it was just nothing. There wasn't anything, you know what I mean? Like,
It's the
at
same
the
with
time,
me. Yeah. Yeah.
At the time, it was nothing. It was just
Yep.
a card. Um, I love the 97s, the red and green. I love those. And then, but like, so PMGs for sure. Rubies, one of the biggest regrets I have for my Eddies is I traded the 97. But I got like three one of ones, and I got some really cool stuff, and I've just figured I'd get another one. And then one came up recently on Alt, I think is what it was.
Yeah.
It sold for like $4,000. Like that's crazy. So anyway, I'm not a huge EC person. I love the 97s, but the 98s and 99s they're really cool, but they're more plastic than they are cardboard.
So I'm not I'm not misrepresenting that fact. You kind of mentioned it too. Like I always remember the '97 metal set. Like I remember pulling packs of ripping packs and boxes, and like I always wanted like a red, or I mean I didn't even see a green, but like a red for sure, right? But then when you remember like when 98s and 99s came out, it kind of died down. Like they weren't
It
nobody
was
was
not.
really interested. I'm like I saw that background, with the landscape designs and all that. And I was kind of like, this is stupid. I don't want this
It is.
anymore.
I know.
Like
I know.
I wanted the all foil card. I
Yeah.
wanted that.
Uh-huh. And like the Eddie 98, right? Like it's really cool. He's
Yeah.
it's a barge. I mean, it's a barge going down I'm thinking the Tennessee River. It's really cool, but like, yeah, in '98, I was like, that's not cool. Like, it's just a card. It didn't stand out. There was nothing amazing about it. So anyway, how they got so popular, I will never know. But
People grow and they mature, and we start now liking the landscapes in the background. It's like an
Yeah.
adult thing. So they're
Hey, I've been
catering
there
more to.
before. Yeah.
Yeah,
that's
well,
true.
this is cool. I can tie this into like where I've been on vacation or something like that.
That's true.
So you
Like
started.
the
You look at your page and you start getting into baseball a little bit. I see a Tom Glavine card right in the top.
yeah, yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that. Like, what are you exploring in baseball, and what are your plans for that collection?
So that is 100% Zan and Smitty's fault, but it's primarily Smitty. He's moved over a lot of his to baseball, and we always liked the same stuff for Eddie's, and so he was like, we've been talking, and so since he got into it, I've been watching. I've tried to watch more baseball, and my Instagram started filling up with more baseball, and so I was like, okay, well, he was telling me how cool the marigolds are in baseball as compared to football, and so I was like, all right, well, I'll try it, right, and so I started with a Fred McGriff. I was an Atlanta Braves because growing up. TBS, right? That's what we had. That's what
Yep.
you watched. So you watched the Braves, and so I started with a Fred McGriff, a cut above, because $70
Yeah.
or whatever. It's a cool card. I like the Eddie cut above, and so yeah, I'll try it. And then I was like, oh, this is fun.
You got hooked.
Uh-huh. And then I bought the Tom Glavine that I posted, and I told Smitty, I was like, I'm in trouble because these marigolds are beautiful. They are incredible. So I just won one the other night, and I didn't think I had a shot at it, but the Mark McGuire that was on eBay,
Oh, you
marigold,
got that? Oh,
I
wow.
did. Yeah, were
Nice.
you after that?
No, I wasn't. Yeah,
Um,
that's crazy.
yeah,
I'll have
and
to-
like I bid. I don't know what it went for. It's like 24 or something, but like I bid right just above that,
Mhm.
and I was like, "There's no way I'm going to win that, right? Like that's going to go for way." But I won it. I'm pretty pumped to get that. So.
I was gonna say that's no better feeling than setting a bid and then you find out you win it. And
Yeah,
also the transition, man. I'll tell you, like when I did football to baseball, it's really like exhilarating because you know all these sets and you're like, wow, I have these football cards of from all these sets. Now I can like get this whole new roadmap of collecting.
And
And
and I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, no, I was just gonna say, so tell me a little bit about what your approach is gonna be if you have one. I know you just started, but what are you thinking as far as maybe players or team sets or certain parallels you're gonna target?
So in football, it's really weird. Like I love football, right? Like that's my sport, whatever. But I, growing up, I never had a lot of heroes in football, right? I I rooted for the team, and I was always excited for Eddie or whoever, like whatever team, to do good. But but I was more for the team than the player. And so when I'm collecting football, every time I've branched out from Eddie to try to get somebody else, I never enjoy it as much. And so then I
Right.
just end up selling it and coming back. But baseball had a lot of heroes. There was, I'd say hero, but you know what I mean? Like a lot of people that I enjoyed watching. I'd watch a game just to watch Nolan Ryan pitch, or I'd watch a game, especially it was in '98 when McGuire and Sosa, like, just you'd watch games just to watch the player, not necessarily. I didn't care who won. I just wanted to watch and see how, just watch them play. So baseball, I think, will be a lot more. My collection will be a lot more diverse, I guess, or a lot of different players. But I'm trying, trying um, to keep it within like just 3 or 4 different sets, instead of just like Eddie. I just got just a ton of them, but instead just have like 3 or 4, like Greg Maddox or Tom Glavine or Mark McGuire, whoever, and probably just end up with 3 or 4 of their cards, maybe 5, something like that, um, of each of the players.
That's
So
interesting that you said that about baseball too, because I was like with baseball, it seems like there's a lot more player collectors than just like full team collectors. Me as like a hardcore Brewer fan, I buy like the best Brewers cards I can find, but in reality, it's really like I focus on the player. So like Scott Pasednik card will pop up or something, and it's like I wouldn't care about him if he wasn't on the team, but like just seeing Scott Pasednik brings back memories of like Scott Pasednik with his stolen base record for the Brewers at the time. And it's like, I start looking at other Scott Pasednik cards. I'm like, oh, I should just like buy all the best Scott Pasednik cards. And I go down that lane, and then I'll see like, a different player that brings back memories. But like with football with the Packers, I do kind of the same thing where like, yeah, I have like the Favre and the Rodgers and like my favorite players, but if I were to branch out like with Jordy Nelson, for example, I don't want to go run through a whole bunch of Jordy Nelson cards and super collect them. I love the guy as a Packer, but like it's more of like a team thing. I might want like
right.
one really good Jordy Nelson card or one like really good card of X player that I remember, but like I don't want to super collect them. But like with the Brewers, it's like every guy that I like a lot more players, and it's like I want to go down that lane and just
Yeah.
collect all their good cards.
Mm-hmm. It's and I don't know if it's because, and I know this sounds silly, but I don't know if it's because in football you don't see their faces. You know what I mean? Like especially when I was growing up, they didn't have 1,000 cameras around them. But like you just, I don't know what it is, but it's more of a team sport, and so it's more. I guess I'm just pulling more for the team and less for the player. And in baseball, um,
It's like with basketball, the modern
yeah,
basketball collector talks about like they collect the personality and stuff. So like they, you fall in love with everything the player has to offer with like the social media stuff and the stuff off
yeah,
the court. Like you just really get into the player more.
yeah.
And I also think, like you actually mentioned this earlier, you grew up in Texas, I grew up in Atlanta. I mean, it's Braves and SEC football are the
Mm-hmm.
top two things here. It's not pro football, it takes a back seat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when we were growing up, the people that we watched were mostly college
Yeah,
football. I mean, there's some pro. And so the things we think back on are, especially for baseball, triggers a lot more nostalgia for me as well, I think. So that's an interesting part that may not be true of other parts of the country.
that's true. Yeah, that's very true. Because like I'm in Nashville, and so now and like or outside of Nashville, but like that, it's very true. I grew up watching the Vols, right, and SEC football, and then when we got the Titans, the only reason I got so into the Titans is because my dad used to own a restaurant, and he bought. So he was one of the founders of the season ticket holders or whatever, and so and he bought them for me to go. Like he had no desire to go, and then I made him go to a game, and then I could never get him back for a few years. But like we just we went to all the games together, and so I kind of fell in love because it is impossible to get to a Vols game back then, right? Especially in the '90s. The Vols were awesome. It was impossible to get tickets, so it was much easier to get Titans tickets. So
yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Well, hey, you brought some cards with you to your office. So I asked you to pick out the top 5 cards you collect. Just count us down 5 to 1. Kind of give us a little bit of an overview of why you picked those cards.
Okay, so I'm going to preface this with I brought 5. I brought 6. I brought several, but I got 6 Eddies that are in my top 5, and the reason is 2 of them I'm counting as one. Okay. But I also brought a couple of baseballs. Just
let's see them. See them. Yeah. More cards, the better.
Okay. So so this would be number 5. Hang on. I don't know if you can see that very well. I used to love.
Explain what the card is too for the people that are listening
to. I used to love playoff. Still do. It's very underrated in my opinion in the hobby, probably because it's only football and it doesn't cross over. But I used to love playoff when I thought they had the coolest stuff. So that is what is that? A 97 playoff prime target of Eddie. Oh, yeah. But it's one of the golds, so it's there's only 5 of them, so it's number 4 or 5. I always wanted one of those in the 90s, and I could never find one. That was one of my favorite, that design, the prime target. And then one of the guys in the Eddie group had one, and so I was like, I got to get that. So I bought it. And then
I was never familiar with that playoff. That parallel right there. That whole thing like gold. Does the gold make the entire card gold, or is it like just like font gold? Or
it's just where the and I didn't bring the base one, but I don't know if you can see, but in the target, the bullseye, that's normally white in there, but it's kind of a bronzy gold looking.
I see it now. Yeah, in the light, it's like a hollow foil kind of.
Yeah. And so this is another 97 playoff, but it's the what is it? The treasures, which are super tough to get, but they're normally like a pink. But this is another one of the golds that's a
5, right?
3 of 5.
Yeah.
And so that's like I snagged that on eBay, and it was like I think it was like $20. Because they didn't know what it was, I'm sure. I just snagged it. Anyway.
That's a sneaky year because they've got like 4 or 5 inserts that have a gold parallel numbered to 5. So, and a lot of big stars are in those sets. So that's I like those prime targets a lot.
Yeah, and it should be like if that was a more popular set, if playoff was more popular, those would be super valuable.
I think so too. But, I think so too.
So there's number 4. That's the red label, gold label, red label, but it's the 1 of 1. I think the red label is the best one of those. I don't know, something about the red and then the Oilers uniform. I feel like that is very nice. And then my favorite part's the back.
Double refractor.
Yeah, because it's also you can't really tell, but the picture of the player is a little translucent, so you can actually see through that part of it just a little bit. So really cool.
That's awesome. Beautiful.
So that was number 4, right? Yeah. Hang on. I'm trying to take the sleeve off so that it doesn't reflect quite as much. So there's number 3. I got that one this year.
Ooh.
The Fusion, yeah.
The Fusion, Atomic Fusion. And I'm glad that PSA decided to put that Eddie on front of it.
Yeah.
Because most of the time they mix that up. Eddie's never on the front, but it's Terry Glenn on the back.
That's right.
That's one of your guys.
Yeah. That's a nice card.
Yeah, it's a 25 of 25. So
Wow. Wait, doesn't he? Wait, isn't that Robert? Doesn't he have Robert Edwards on the back?
oh, maybe it is Robert Edwards. Yeah, it's Robert Edwards. Sorry.
Okay. I was
Robert
gonna say usually matches position. Okay.
That's his
That's
guy
right,
too,
card.
though.
Yeah.
I like him
Other
more.
guy.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. A lot of the 96 Eddie and even some of the 97s, when there was a dual person on there, it was Eddie and Terry Glenn.
Yeah.
Both being
right.
Ohio State. So.
Robert Edwards is a pretty good guy coming out of college. When I hear his name, I always think of the scorecard, the base card, where he's in like a ball pit.
Yeah.
He used to piss me off because I liked him when he came out, and I would buy some of his cards, and then I open that pack, and he's in like a ball pit. I'm like, what the hell is this? It's like Chuck E. Cheese or something.
And it's funny. It's funny how card companies decide their pictures that they're using. There's some that just don't make any sense, right? Like that one. There's a Steve McNair. I think it's a 96, maybe 95. I don't know. No, it would be 90, maybe 97. But it's a 97 Pinnacle, I think. But he's fumbling the ball. like he's fumbled it, and he's trying to pick it up. And like, why would you do that, Tim? Why would you? Anyway. Sorry.
Someone didn't like Steve McNair, took that.
Right.
Yeah, and decided they're going to
Embarrass him
that for everybody to see.
I look like an idiot, so I don't want to make any more cards of him.
Yeah.
I don't want this card.
Yeah, I'm gonna produce 10 million of this card with him fumbling the football. But anyway, all right. So that is the green.
Whew.
That's number 2.
Number 2. What's number 1? Jeez.
Yeah. So my number 1 is not. It's the one that when I was in high school and college that I had in one of those what is it? The plastic screw downs that were like this thick. You know what I mean? Like because at the time I had never seen anything like it because there was nothing like it. Matter of fact, I don't think there's been anything like it ever since. Really, there's a few that are close, but it's the premium stock mirror red, the rookie.
Oh yeah.
I love that card.
I love
That's
those.
great.
I got a Favre mirror gold out of that set. I like the mirror golds, but I ended up moving it to a friend that really wanted that card, and I'm like, you know what? I really want the premium stock. Once I saw a couple of those in person, like that doof
so
shine is it's awesome. So I got to get a Favre of that.
But a PSA 10 just sold on Golden like last week of Eddie. I think it went for like 1700. Like,
Wow.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I was going to try to win it because I was like, oh, PSA 10, mine's a 9. Like, I love mine, but I'll take a 10. And then I didn't want it that bad.
Right.
That's
a lot.
Yeah. Well, and like the green costs more than that. So I get that some are going to cost more, but like if I've already got a 9 and yet you can't tell a difference like with your eye, the difference between a 9 and a 10 on virtually any card. So
especially a card like that with that Dufex surface, you're not going to see something on the surface of that without a loop.
All right, you want a couple of baseballs?
Yeah, let's see what you got.
I mean, one of them you'll know really well. It's the Greg Maddox, and then
that was the
grand finale.
Sorry,
grand finale. Yeah, and then I got Tony Gwynn, grand finale.
Yeah,
and then the one that I posted, the Tom Glavine. That gold. Like the football mirror gold, right? It's only gold right here.
The gold on baseball is better. I got a Mark Loretta, and I do like the mirror gold baseball is better.
It's more prominent.
It is, and it's such like both of these golds, right? The grand finale and the mirror gold. It's like a deep. I don't know. Like I guess
deep. It's like a darker gold. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not. it's not super shiny. I mean, they're shiny, but they're not. You know what I mean? Yeah, I kind of fall in love with the. Um,
Do you like the SPX, the grand finale, football or baseball better? I know
uh,
Zan likes the football better because it's not horizontal, right?
yeah, so I feel like I like the baseball design, like the little holograms and all the stuff on it in the background. I love all that, but yeah, I wish it was. I mean, I don't like the horizontal, but I can't. You know.
Can't complain too
Yeah,
much.
yeah,
Yeah. I do like that they are different. I mean, at
yeah,
least they're, that I think that's cool. Baseball's the only one that has well, I think hockey may, but that baseball of the main three is the only one that has that horizontal 97. So that's awesome. Well, hey, those are some amazing cards. What's on your? Give us some like maybe like a top three of what you're looking for. It can be baseball, can be if there's any like high end Eddie that you're looking for, just in case someone out there listening might have one.
yeah. Uh, so I would baseball wise, since I won the McGuire, I've got to go get the Sosa.
Yeah,
To
and
go
the
with that.
Maddox.
Right,
And
and
the
the Maddox,
Maddox.
yeah. So the Maddox was the number one chase, but since I accidentally won the McGuire, I'm
Accidentally
having
put a bid in and
Yeah,
won.
caught shilling and
yes.
won it. Yeah.
uh, I mean, I feel like 2,400 is a pretty good
It's a good price. Yeah.
price.
Yeah,
I don't
very
know.
good. I think so
So,
too.
but anyway, so uh, what was I saying? Yeah, so the Maddox, I want the Maddox. But I've put that one since I won the McGuire. I've put that one on hold,
Sure.
uh, and then now I'm got to go get the Sosa, and then come back for the Maddox. But
So mirror golds, basically mirror golds are
yeah,
what you're going to start looking for.
yeah, probably. I can't. I mean, I would love to have some 24 carats, but I've never seen one of those in person of any player that I cared to look at. I mean, I've seen some commons, but I've never seen any
Right.
um, of actual players, and I'm sure they're awesome. But I think they're super pricey, aren't they? Aren't they like
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. You're
um,
getting into the four figures for some of the big stars,
yeah,
4,000 or 5,000 for McGuire. So
yeah.
it's
I
not
don't,
a,
I probably don't love them that much.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
that's a lot. So
Well, the Mirror Gold's a nice substitute. I mean, obviously it's a different type of card, but there's something about the exclusivity of it in baseball in particular that makes that such a standout parallel. All right, well, hey man, thank you for sharing all that
absolutely.
info. And yeah, and if you don't follow Brian, check him out on Instagram at Kings_collection_615, where he's posting plenty of Eddie, plenty of baseball. Brian, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks again to Brian for coming on and talking about his Eddie collection, his fledgling 90s baseball collection. Go check out his page on Instagram if you haven't. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next week.